Hillsborough County has launched its redesigned website, hcfl.gov. The new domain boasts a variety of improvements to searchability, page layout, navigation, and website speed. The revamped website features robust search functions, making it easier for users to find the information they need. Whether searching for essential government services, paying water bills, accessing event information, learning how to acquire a new trash can, or identifying evacuation zones, the enhanced search functionality ensures quick access to relevant content. HCFL.gov's new design features a clean, modern, and intuitive layout. The streamlined design enhances user-friendliness for easy navigation and access to important resources. Navigating the website is now more straightforward than ever. Users can seamlessly move between different sections, departments, and services while interacting with information and resources. Ready to see what all the fuss is about? Head to hcfl.gov and discover your best source for all things Hillsborough County.
Good morning and welcome to the March 25th, 2024 Hearing Officer Meeting, Land Use Hearing Officer Meeting. I'm Pamela Jo Hatley and I'll be serving as your Land Use Hearing Officer this morning. Before we get started with the meeting, if you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, again, this is the March 25th, 2024 Land Use Hearing Officer Meeting, and I'm Pamela Jo Hatley. If you would please silence any devices you might have that make noise at this time. And I would like to introduce Ms. Colleen Marshall with the Hillsborough County Development Services Department to introduce staff and any agenda changes, withdrawals, or continuances.
Good morning. Colleen Marshall, Development Services. To my right is Carmen Mason of Development Services staff. To my left is Mary Dorman of the Hillsborough County County Attorney's Office and Jillian Massey of Planning Commission staff. During the course of the hearing, a number of other planners will be presenting their findings for various cases and will be introduced for each item. We have no changes to the published agenda. We do have a few continuances today. Item A1, Special Use 230966. The applicant is Than Lock LLC, doing business as Thin and French Bakery. This application is being continued by staff to the April 22nd, 2024 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. Item A2, Variance 240297. The applicant is Scott and Judy Holt. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the April 22nd, 2024 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. Item A3, Variance 240370. The applicant is Carmen Matthews. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the April 22nd, 2024 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. Item A4, Special Use 240374. The applicant is Tacos Las Californias OG LLC. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the April 22nd, 2024 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. And item A5, Special Use 240422. The applicant is Alina's Blue Cigars and Hookah LLC. This application is withdrawn by the applicant. This concludes the continuances and withdrawals.
All right, thank you, Ms. Marshall. All right, today the agenda consists of items that require a public hearing before a hearing master. I will conduct a hearing on each item today and submit a decision within 15 working days after the conclusion of today's public hearings. My decisions will be filed with the clerk of the Board of County Commissioners. The hearings today will be informal. I will ask questions related to the scope of direct testimony and may call and question witnesses as I deem appropriate. I will decide all questions of procedure. I will take evidence, but will exclude evidence that is irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious. Evidence may be presented in written form, and all testimony shall be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used to supplement or explain other evidence, but shall not be sufficient alone to support a finding of fact unless it would be admissible over objections in a civil court action. The order of the presentations today shall be as follows. First, county staff will call the case. Development Services Department will have 5 minutes to present its report and findings. The applicant and the applicant's witnesses will have 15 minutes to present the proposal. Proponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments in support of the proposal. Opponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments against the proposal. Then county staff will have 5 minutes to present any amended findings or comments, and the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal and summation. For special use cases, county staff will call the case. The applicant and the applicant's witnesses will then have 15 minutes to present the proposal. County Development Services will have 5 minutes to present its report and findings. Planning Commission will have 5 minutes to present its findings of compliance or noncompliance with a comprehensive plan. Proponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments in support of the proposal. Opponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments against the proposal. County staff will have 5 minutes to present any amended findings or comments, and the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal and summation. The 15 minutes allotted for proponents and opponents is the total time among them, so if there are a number of persons who wish to speak on an item, the 15 minutes will be distributed among those persons. You may also appoint a single spokesperson to represent your views if you wish. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded, so please speak into the microphone so your testimony can be heard and recorded. When you're finished speaking, please see the clerk to my left to sign in. Now we'll hear from the County Attorney's Office, who will inform us of legal requirements for appeals of the Lujo decision.
Good morning. Mary Dorman from the County Attorney's Office. This land use hearing officer public hearing is for variance and special use requests. This is the time for interested parties to present evidence and testimony. Once the hearing officer has closed a case, the record of that case is also closed and no new evidence regarding that case may be submitted thereafter. Any decision by the hearing officer may be appealed to the Land Use Appeals Board. Should a decision of the hearing officer be appealed, the evidence and testimony presented at this public hearing shall be the only evidence that is subject to review by the Appeals Board. In reaching a final decision on petitions, the Appeals Board will only consider the decision of the hearing officer and the record made at this public hearing. If an appeal is filed, the Appeals Board hearing shall consist of oral argument by the party appealing the decision, county staff, and any interveners, each of whom may be represented by legal counsel. The following shall have standing to appeal a decision of the hearing officer or to intervene in an appeal. 1, the applicant, or 2, anyone who appeared before the hearing officer, presented testimony or other evidence, and is adversely affected by the decision of the hearing officer. It is the role of the County Attorney's Office to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is allowed before the Appeals Board that was not presented to the hearing officer at today's hearing. The County Attorney will recommend that the Appeals Board disregard evidence or testimony that is outside the record made at today's public hearing. Any evidence presented to the Appeals Board that is outside the record created at today's hearing could jeopardize the legality of the Appeals Board decision, and the presenter of that evidence could hurt their own cause. The safest course of action, then, is for you to write down any comments you make today and repeat them to the Appeals Board.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dorman. All testimony taken today must be under oath, so if you plan to speak on any item, please stand and raise your hand and I'll swear you in. If there are any online who plan to speak, also raise your hand to be sworn in. All right, do you affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I think we're ready for the first case, Ms. Marshall.
Today's agenda, we have no vested rights, which brings us to Section C, fee waivers. Item C1, fee waiver 240451. The applicant is Neighborhood Pest Control Lawn and Shrub Care Incorporated. The applicant requests a fee waiver of the variance application fee on the basis of staff error. The administrator is not authorized to grant fee waivers in such circumstances. Therefore, the subject request must be reviewed for approval of an exception by the land use hearing officer. Per DRPM Section 9.7G, the land use hearing officer shall conduct an independent review of the request based on the criteria herein and the testimony at the proceeding. In granting an exception, the land use hearing officer shall be required to find extraordinary financial circumstances, emergency, catastrophe, or staff error which are outside the scope of the administrator's authority to consider.
All right, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
William Malloy, 325 South Boulevard, Tampa, Florida. As Ms. Marshall said, this is a fee waiver request. It is ostensibly based on staff error. Given that it really is a mutual error between the citizens and the staff, I believe it's well documented in the backup here exactly what occurred. I'm not inclined to belabor any points in here. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the case.
All right, I don't have any questions for you. I reviewed the file and will review the file. I believe the decisions on these cases are due within 5 days of the hearing, so that'll be submitted.
Okay.
Is that all you have?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so. I think it's
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Be sure and sign in. I'm not sure if the procedures require public comment on these cases, but I'll ask. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this item? This is C1 fee waiver case. All right, do not hear anyone. Anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this case? All right, do not hear anyone. Mr. Malloy, anything further? That's it. All right. We'll close the hearing then on case FW 24-0451.
We have no remands or reconsideration requests, which brings us to Section F, Site Development Variance Request. Item F1, Variance 240318. The applicant is Alan Dethloff. The request is a variance to encroach into the wetland setback. Staff findings will be provided by Wayne Doyen.
Good morning. Wayne Doyen, Hillsborough County Development Services. This is variance 24-0318. Request summary is the applicant is requesting a variance from the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback requirement, section 4.01.07.b.4 of the Land Development Code. The applicant's specific request, as shown on the site plan submitted 01/2024, is to allow for the construction of a barn and an after-the-fact permit for a 4-foot tall chain link fence within the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. LDC section 4.01.07.b.4, LDC requirement, no filling, excavating, or placement of permanent structures or other impervious surfaces shall be allowed within a required 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. Variance 20-foot, 5-inch encroachment for the construction of a barn and an after-the-fact permit for a 4-foot tall chain link fence. Result, 9-foot, 5-inch remaining setback. Findings. A wetland setback compensation planting plan has been provided on the site plan dated 1/12/2024 that provides equivalent square footage of compensation planting to the amount of encroachment. That's it.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant here?
Good morning. Alan Detloff, 4007 McGee Road, Plant City. Mr. Doyen did a very good job of explaining the variance. I won't belabor it by reiterating, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Mr. Detloff, when did you acquire this property?
In 2012.
And when you acquired the property, was there a fence there already?
There was not. No.
There was not. So you installed the fence.
I did.
And you wish to install a barn.
Correct.
All right. Is there, and I'm looking at your site plan, so is there any way you can move the barn forward a bit to get it out of the wetland conservation area setback?
No, ma'am. There's a drain field for the septic system in there that is the key constraint. And I did look into having the drain field reconfigured, but that's quite cost prohibitive to the tune of probably $15,000 to reconfigure that, and there's no issues with the septic system, so I'd rather not get into that if not necessary.
All right. And of course, when you acquired the property, you were aware of the water body behind your property. Is that correct?
I was aware of the water body, but not the 30-foot setback.
Okay. Didn't show on your survey or your plat?
Well, it did, but I didn't understand the constraints, I guess, that would provide. And honestly, we weren't, thinking about this structure at that time when we purchased the property.
Okay. Anything further then?
The only other thing I'll mention is with respect to the fence, I did, when I had that constructed, I did call zoning here and had a conversation about the fence to try to understand the permitting for that. Mm-hmm. That was many years ago. I don't recall if the wetland came up, again, not understanding the constraints of the setback area. That may be something I failed to mention, but it didn't come up, but I did attempt to do that right, you know, and have the discussions about permitting.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Be sure and sign in with the clerk.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Or is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Do not hear anyone. County Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Detloff, anything further?
No, ma'am. I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. That closes the hearing then on variance 24-0318.
Next item is item F2, variance 240426. The applicant is Jeff Larson, Larson Communities Number 3 LLC. The request is a variance to encroach into the wetland setback. Staff findings will be provided by Wayne Doyen.
Good morning, Wayne Doyen, Hillsborough County Development Services. This is variance application 24-0426. Request summary: the applicant is requesting a variance from the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback requirement, section 4.01.07.B.4 of the Land Development Code. The applicant's specific request, as shown on the site plan submitted as 3/12/2024, is to allow for the reasonable use of the backyard area within the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. LDC section 4.01.07.B.4, LDC requirement: no filling, excavating, or placement of permanent structures or other impervious surfaces shall be allowed within the required 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. Variance: encroachment into a 30-foot wetland setback to allow for reasonable use of the backyard area. Lot 1, Block B equals 11.5 feet. Lot 17, Block O equals 18.44 feet. Remaining setback: Lot 1, Block B, 18.5 feet. Lot 17, Block O, 11.56 feet. Findings: the wetland setback conservation planting area will be reviewed and approved with the subdivision construction plans. 2, the physical barrier required by EPC per the plans dated 3/12/2024 to protect against encroachment into the wetlands by a fence or shrubbery with signage must be shown on the wetland setback conservation planting plan to be reviewed with the subdivision construction plans. The barrier must be installed before the CO for each home is issued.
Mr. Doyen, I had some questions for you on this one.
Yes, ma'am.
The Land Development Code, of course, prohibits fill or excavation or structures within the wetland conservation area setback. And this variance is requesting, it's requesting a variance for reasonable use, but reasonable use is not a prohibited activity. So what exactly is the variance for?
The variance, from what we've been told, is for the homeowners that are purchasing these properties to install a pool, install a backyard area. That's why they want to decrease the wetland setback to this amount, so it's not a wetland setback anymore. That's what they're trying to do.
So, and installing a pool, of course, would involve excavation or filling or putting a structure, but that is not before me.
Yes, but if this gets approved, from what the builders are trying to do, they are trying to take away that setback. So they're trying to decrease the setback to be behind the fence or the shrubbery. Nothing will happen behind that area. So their backyard that they're buying, because most of their backyard, you'll see there's a couple more of these coming, almost the whole backyards on some of them are all wetland setbacks. So they are trying to decrease the wetland setback. So for this one lot's going to only have an 18.5 foot setback. It'll be the wetland, the setback, it'll be a fence or shrubbery, whatever they put in, and then it'll be the uplands after that for the backyard area. They're going to do wetland mitigation in a different area of the property, which they'll explain when they come up.
Okay. The issue that I have with this request, and I have reviewed the others too, but those hearings are not open,
Yeah.
so we're not discussing those.
Yes.
But this request From the site plan, I don't see any activity in the wetland area, the wetland conservation area setback that is a prohibited activity under the Land Development Code. Land Development Code imposes a 30-foot wide wetland conservation area setback. I can't just remove that. I don't have that authority. All I have is the authority to grant a variance for something that's a prohibited activity. So that's my issue with this request.
Understand.
I wonder if it's right to be heard if there's not a prohibited activity actually being proposed.
I understand completely, and I actually agree with you.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I agree with.
I just have to ask these questions,
Nope.
and we can hear from the applicant if Development Services doesn't have anything further. Okay, we'll hear from the applicant. Thank you, Mr. Doyen.
Good morning. My name is Twin Tran. I'm with Ardura Group, 4921 Memorial Highway, Suite 300, Tampa, Florida, 33634. I'm also the engineer of record on the project.
Okay.
So this variance is for removal of a portion of the 30-foot wetland setback. At this time, the interpretation that we've received from staff is that we cannot build a pool cage in the 30-foot setback or a fence. So that's the interpretation that we've received. So to be able to do that, which is the neighborhood is very upscale neighborhood. It's an existing neighborhood that most of the homes do have a caged pool. So that our request is to remove a portion of the wetland setback to be able to construct that pool cage and fence. This is an older project. It was platted in 1976. My client has purchased it since 1980. All the infrastructure is in the ground already for this development. At the time, the platted lots are slightly narrower, or not as much depth, and to be able to fit the product that they have out there, they need a minimum of 110-foot depth, and the pool that they have engineered plans on for this development. And we've provided a 15-foot minimum wetland setback undisturbed for this area, and we've already coordinated with EPC staff. We have an EPC authorization to impact. I'm sorry, this is a wrong application. We have SwiftMud completeness for the review of this application, and we submitted to Development Services construction plans, and the only outstanding items that we've discussed with them, we've got some zoning questions regarding the setbacks, and we've ironed those out, and of course this 30-foot wetland setback is the last remaining comments.
Okay, so, and thank you for that. On this application, and I'm looking at the site plan, there's 2 lots. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And one of the lots, on the site plan, it's Lot 1, Block P. It appears that there is a pool, that a portion of that pool, or the lanai, encroaches, at least from what I can tell from the site plan, encroaches into the wetland area setback, that purple shaded area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then the red line, is that proposed to be a fence?
Following the variance submittal, EPC staff had commented on, they requested a fence or a planted row of native vegetation. So we've proposed to plant a row of wax myrtles. EPC staff wanted to have a demarcation between the undisturbed area of the wetland buffer and the yard. So that is a request from EPC.
Okay. Then on this particular lot, again, the prohibited items in the code would be excavation, fill, or structures. Would wax myrtle plantings be a prohibited activity? And I would ask Development Services that question.
I actually have deferred to Wayne. He's
Thank you.
a little bit.
Mr.
No,
Doyen?
it would not be.
Okay, so the planting of the wax myrtles, and that's the red line, that would not be a prohibited activity, so it doesn't seem a variance is necessary for that. So on this lot 1, Block P, it appears the only issue that requires a variance is that small section of the pool and patio that will encroach in the wetland area.
And a fence. At this time, you cannot build a fence in the 30-foot setback.
There's not a fence proposed. Your testimony was there would be a wax myrtle, a planting of wax myrtles.
I think we put an option. EPC had stated asked us to do a 4-foot fence or wax myrtle, one or the other.
And the decision has been made to put in wax myrtles, is that
okay.
correct?
Either one is our client is good with either one.
Okay, let's move to the other lot, Lot 17, Block O. And I see on your site plan the outline for the house, the proposed house, and the pool. That does not seem to encroach into the wetland conservation area setback. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the area in purple, on the corner, it looks like the corner of that lot, that's the only encroachment area, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and what is going into that area that's purple shaded? What is being built there?
At this time, it's just the yard.
Okay, so there's no fill or excavation or structures?
Correct.
Okay. So it doesn't seem there's any variance requirement there.
Again, I think when we had reviewed this, the interpretation was that we could not put a fence in there, and I think part of the idea was to be able to put a fence in your yard. So that was one of the reasons why we had requested that variance.
Okay. The variance will not be for removing the conservation area setback. I don't believe I have that authority. The variance is for an encroachment for one of the prohibited activities. So I'll review this request under the terms of the Land Development Code as it is.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anything further?
Do you have anything further? Nothing further.
All right, be sure and sign in with the clerk, please. Thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. And applicant, did you have anything further you wish to add? No, thank you. All right. This closes the hearing on variance request WS 24-0426.
Next item is item F3, variance 240427. The applicant is Jeff Larson, Larson Communities Number 3 LLC. The request is a variance to encroach into the wetland setback. Staff findings will be provided by Wayne Doyen.
Wayne Doyen, Hillsborough County Natural Development Services. This is variance application 24-0427. Request summary. Applicant is requesting a variance from the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback requirement, section 4.01.07.B.4 of the Land Development Code. The applicant's specific request, as shown on the site plan submitted as 3/12/2024, is to allow for the reasonable use of the backyard area within the 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. LDC section 4.01.07.B.4. LDC requirement, no filling, excavating, or placement of permanent structures or other impervious surfaces shall be allowed within a required 30-foot wetland conservation area setback. Encroachment into the 30-foot wetland setback is to allow for the reasonable use of the backyard area. Lot 37, Block A equals 30 feet. Result, Lot 37, Block A equals 0 setback. Findings 1, the wetland setback conservation planting area will be reviewed and approved with the subdivision construction plans. Number 2, the physical barrier required by EPC per the plans dated 3/12/2024 is to protect against the encroachment to the wetlands by a fence or shrubbery with signage must be shown on the wetland setback conservation planting plan to be reviewed with the subdivision construction plans. The barrier must be installed before the CO for each home is issued.
All right, thank you, Mr. Doyen. And on this one, actually another question for you. Same issues as before, as far as reasonable use, which of course is not a prohibited activity in the wetland conservation setback area. So that issue, and I am not sure what activity is being requested to encroach in the wetland setback area. The other issue I have with this case is the EPC survey clearly shows that there are wetlands on this lot. But the site plan does not show the wetland area. The site plan shows the proposed outline of the home, the proposed home, and the pool and patio, but it doesn't show the wetlands. So I can't tell where the encroachment is for the wetland setback area. I'm sure there is an encroachment, but from the site plan, I can't tell where it is. Part of this proposed activity, I'm sure, encroaches into the wetland, which I don't have any jurisdiction or authority over. That's the EPC. But the site plan doesn't tell me exactly how much of an encroachment is necessary.
For this one, they were requesting the full setback be taken away, which,
and that
what we've learned.
Doesn't really, that's not really consistent in my reading of the Land Development Code. I don't have authority to take away a wetland conservation area setback that the Land Development Code imposes. I have only the authority to grant a variance for a prohibited activity in that area. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anything further then, Mr. Doyen?
Nope.
All right, thank you so much. We'll hear from the applicant.
Twin Tran with Ardura. I didn't know if I had to repeat everything again.
Yeah, repeat your address for this case, for this record.
Ardura Group, 4921 Memorial Highway, Tampa, 33634.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize, the plan didn't show the wetland impact area, and I didn't bring one with me. But we did there was a portion of the wetland up to the platted lot line that was approved for impact through the EPC impact authorization with mitigation, and also approved by Swift Mud as a completeness review. We're waiting for that pending permit. We've gone through the process with EPC on that impact, and we showed the impact to the to the lot line that is platted. And then with the house product that we put on, that we show on the plan, we are unable to build this product with at the 30-foot wetland setback. To the rear lot line is where our wetland impact line is. So if you offset 30 feet from that wetland impact line, we would not be able to build a house. So we're proposing to remove the 30-foot wetland setback in that area to allow full use of their property and to be able to construct the home itself, the primary structure, and the pool structure. In addition, we've coordinated with EPC. Their concern was a demarcation between the lot area and the wetland area. So we've provided the option to put a 4-foot high aluminum fence or a row of wax myrtles that I understand EPC will be inspecting it at the time of CO of the building.
All right, and I'm just looking at the EPC survey, and I can see, of course, the outline of the wetland as it was delineated on this lot. And I can compare that to the site plan, but the request is to remove, pardon me, remove the 30-foot wide conservation area setback from the lot entirely, and I don't believe I have the authority to do that. I think the site plan needs to show exactly where the impact is to the 30-foot wetland area setback, and it does not, and so I can't really see what I'm being asked, what the variance is, what the required variance is. I would like to inform you that if you choose to, you could request a continuance, and I would entertain that request for continuance to correct this site plan. If you don't choose to request a continuance, that's your prerogative. But I would just like to inform you that you could do that. I can't see here exactly what the impact is that I'm being asked to consider a variance for. And you can bring the microphone over so we can hear you.
Thank you. The southwest corner of the home, the house primary structure itself, there, I don't know if you can see it on here.
Yes, I can see it just fine. And I'm looking at a PDF of the same thing, so I can see it up close.
So that southwest corner of the house itself is located within that 30-foot wetland setback area, and also the pool cage area that you can see in stripe there.
I can see that, and so what this site plan should do is tell me how much square footage of the wetland setback area that pool cage and possibly the house will encroach on, and ask for a variance for that encroachment.
So that would be a reduction of the 30-foot setback request, and that we would need the option to do a extension. Is that
Continuance.
continuance? Sorry, I'm sorry.
And I believe Mr. Doyen wants to. Mr. Doyen, did you want to put anything on the record?
I was recommending now that what you've said, and this was a fast track, and
Oh, I understand.
I wasn't sure if, honestly, I did this with Carla Sheldon, we weren't sure if the 30-foot could be removed.
Okay.
It's never come up since I've been doing it. So I requested her to do continuance. I understand what they need. It's not what they want, but I understand what they need, and we could continue to get this done.
All right. So, applicant, would you prefer to discuss it with your client and we'll close the hearing for now and reopen it later this morning? Or do you can proceed?
It sounds like we need to do a continuance for to relook with staff on the setback reduction.
Okay.
And maybe take a look at minimizing it some more.
Okay. Then let me ask Development Services, if we grant a continuance, what would be the new hearing date?
The next hearing date would have to be May 20th. The April 22nd would have already had to been noticed.
Mm-hmm. So then I would go back to the applicant. Are you requesting a continuance to the May 20th Land Use Hearing Officer meeting?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Then I need to just ask the public if there's any comments on the continuance request. So is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of the request for a continuance on this item? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to the request for continuance on this item?
Yes.
Okay, come forward, please. And state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Jeff Collins, 12801 Killarney Court. If I'm understanding you correctly, even though there's a continuance, the fact that this application itself may not even be in the purview of this body, is that correct? Even if there is a continuance?
I'm not sure if I understand your question. This is a variance request, which
Right.
certainly is something that the land use hearing officer is authorized to consider.
Okay.
So the hearing is under the purview of the land use hearing officer.
But the waiver of the whole wetland setback, whether or not it can, okay.
The item, the applicant has requested a continuance.
Okay.
If that is granted, then this variance will not be heard today. It will be heard May 20th. And I'm not hearing I'm not hearing evidence on this item today. It will be heard at the May 20th hearing.
Okay. All right, that's all I need.
Does that answer your
That
question?
satisfies me. Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Be sure and sign in with the clerk here. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to the continuance request on this item? Do not hear anyone? All right, Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Then applicant, I'm granting the continuance to May 20th, 2024 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting for variance WS 24-0427. All right, thank you.
Tweed,
And that-
could you come sign in again, please?
And that closes the hearing on 24-0427.
Next item is item F4, variance 240428. The applicant is Jeff Larson, Larson Communities Number 3 LLC. The request is a variance to encroach into the wetland setback. Staff findings will be provided by Wayne Doyen.
Wayne Doyen, Hillsborough County Natural Resources. I'm going to suggest this one be continued.
All right, thank you, Mr. Doyen. Do we wish to present the staff report? Is that necessary for the hearing, or do we just want to hear from the applicant? Are you requesting a continuance for this item, applicant?
Yes.
Okay. And so the applicant is requesting a continuance on wetland, let's see, variance WS 24-0428. And as I understand it from the previous item, this is a request for continuance to May 20th so that the applicant can work with staff to refine the site plan. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Just need to go to the public. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak to the request for continuance as far as support for the request continuance on this item? All right, not hearing anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to the request for continuance on this item? All right, not hearing anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. All right. Applicant, I'm granting the continuance on this variance request WS 24-0428 to the May 20th, 2024 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. So this item is continued, and that closes the hearing on 24-0428.
This brings us to section G, sign variance requests. Item G1, variance 240299. The applicant is Permitting Pros LLC. The request is a variance to sign requirements. Staff findings will be provided by Sam Ball.
Good morning, Sam Ball with Development Services. The applicant is requesting 3 variances to accommodate the alteration of 2 residential ground signs at a multifamily property located at the northeast corner of Causeway Boulevard and Regency Lakes Drive. One of the variances is for an additional sign, and 2 of the variances are for reduced setbacks. According to Section 730C1C for minimum sign setbacks, monument signs shall be set back a minimum 15 feet from the right-of-way, but shall be permitted an increase in height for each 1 foot of additional setback provided from the right-of-way line. For the 2 setback variances, the applicant is requesting a 5-foot decrease to allow for an 8-foot 5-inch tall sign to have a 15-foot front setback for the sign shown as C in the application, and a 3-foot 6-inch setback to allow an 8-foot 5-inch tall sign to have a 16.5-foot setback for sign B. According to Section 730C3C for residential entry signs, not more than 2 ground signs are permitted to be installed or erected at each entrance to a multifamily development, provided the combined aggregate sign area of said sign shall not exceed 50 square feet. The applicant is requesting 1 additional monument sign with 38.35 square feet to be located approximately 470 feet from the nearest entrance to the multifamily development, which is not considered an entrance, which is shown as sign B. That concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Just a couple.
Yes, ma'am.
So for the entrance provision, entrance sign provision, and I have looked at the site plan and know where these signs are going. For this sign that is 470 feet from the actual access point, is this an entrance sign?
No, it's not, because the road that it faces goes to other businesses and other properties. So if it was strictly to this property, we might be able to say that it is. But since it's 470 feet from the entrance, if it were at the, going from the public road to the private driveway, then we could say it is. But it's at the corner of 2 private right-of-ways and each right-of-way goes to other properties. So we can't say that's the entrance to this property.
Okay, this sign is actually, it's on 2 public roads, right? It's on the corner of the property that is 2 public roads?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, so if it's not at an entranceway, then does the provision on the limit of 2 entrance signs, does that even apply?
Well, those are they're only allowed signs at entrances. So without being at an entrance, the sign wouldn't be allowed. So they're asking for an additional sign.
So they're asking for a sign, an entrance sign that's not at an entrance.
That's correct. So that's why it's basically just an additional sign.
Okay. The other question I have about this sign is the square footage. Isn't there a limit of 50 square footage total for entrance signs?
There is, and so
this one, the 2 together, or the 2 sign faces on this sign would exceed that, wouldn't it?
I believe so, because this one is 38.5 square feet, and I would imagine the other sign is more than 11.5 square feet.
Isn't this one 38.35 square feet on both sides?
That's correct. So the total would have to be under 50.
So the total aggregate here is 76.7 on this one sign?
No, it's 38.35 each side combined.
Okay. So the 2 sides together on this one sign are only 38.35?
That is correct.
Oh.
And for that determination, so where that says edge at Brandon Apartments, it's just the height and width of each.
Okay, I
It's
see.
not the whole sign structure.
I see. I apologize. I do see it's 19.17 square feet per side. Okay. So 38.35 altogether. So that provision doesn't apply because this is not an entrance sign.
Right, so so the code would only allow up to 50 square feet anyway. This one gets it's kind of tricky because it's residential property, so they're not really allowed, the only signs we're really supposed to have are at entrances. If it were a commercial property, each sign would be allowed 50 square feet per side, or they can combine them into one big sign up to 100 square feet per side. Since they have other signs on this property, they wouldn't be able to combine all the signs into one sign. So we don't really have like a mixed use sign provision.
It seems to me from reading the code provisions that are cited here that if it's not an entry sign, 7.03.00.C.3.C, C3C, doesn't apply. So there's really not a provision for a sign that's not an entrance sign, and we don't have any guidance on where it can be or the size of the sign face.
Right, so it's just a variance to allow for an additional sign that's not really allowed.
Is there any record on when the sign was placed there so that it would be it would be a non-conforming sign or something that could be allowed under the code?
That would help, but our code doesn't allow for non-conforming signs to be altered. So there's not really a non-conforming protection for signs.
Okay. So it's a replacement sign, I understand that. It's just that I don't seem to have any provision of the code that I can apply, and I can't make new provisions.
Right, and so I went through the records and found another variance where a similar sign, it was similar circumstances, and it was an additional, they wrote it up as an additional sign. So I used precedent.
I understand. Is that in the record?
No,
No,
I didn't have it
okay.
in the record.
All right. That's all the questions I have for you. Do you have anything further, Mr. Ball?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
All right, applicant?
Good morning. My name is Daniel Crowley, 2430 Leslie Avenue, Martinez, California. Yeah, I'd just like to point out that the whole purpose for this was kind of a change of copy application. Since the property's under new ownership, they wanted to name it what they named it. The signs have been there for at least a decade. We have an approved county survey from 10 years ago that does show the signs in their existing location, obviously with a different copy. If you go even further back, they've been there at least 16 years. I know Google Earth is not exactly for the record, but they've been there for a while. Sign B in particular, we feel is valuable from a wayfinding perspective, both for deliveries, emergency vehicles, guests, future residents, et cetera. Once again, it's really just a change of copy on existing signs that we're going for here. So happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
All right, thank you. I did see the old survey in the record. There's also aerials available on the property or appraiser's website, so I can see that the sign has been there a substantial length of time. I just, my problem is there's not a provision of the code that seems to apply here on which to base a variance. So I'll review the record, though.
Understood.
Do you have anything further?
No, that's all.
All right, thank you. Be sure and sign in with the clerk. Thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. Applicant, did you have anything further? Thank you. All right, this closes the hearing on on variance 24-0299.
This brings us to section H, variance request, item H1, variance 240378. The applicant is Leslie Van Trump. The request is a variance to accessory structure requirements and accessory dwelling requirements. Staff findings will be provided by Isis Brown.
Good morning, Isis Brown, Development Services, variance application 24-0378. The applicant is requesting variances to accommodate an existing accessory structure and a conversion of an accessory structure to a dwelling on property zoned RSC 2. The first variance is for the accessory structure per LDC section 6.11.04.b and LDC section 6.01.01. Accessory structures exceeding 15 feet in height shall meet the primary structure setback of that zoning district. A minimum 25 feet rear yard setback is required in the RSC zoning district. The applicant is requesting a 10-foot variance, The second variance on the accessory structure, that's a structure to the southeast. On there, per LDC section 6.1104B and LDC section 6.0101, accessory structure exceeding 15 feet in height, minimum side yard setback of 10 feet is required. The applicant is requesting a 7-foot variance, which results in a 3-foot yard setback. And then on the second variance for the accessory dwelling that's being converted to an accessory, the second variance on the accessory structure that's being converted to the accessory dwelling per LDC section 6.11.02E and LDC section 6.0101. An accessory dwelling shall meet the principal dwelling setbacks except under certain circumstances which do not apply in this case. A 10-foot variance side yard setback is required in the RSC zoning district. The applicant is requesting a 7-foot variance, which would result in a 3-foot side yard setback for the proposed accessory dwelling. Findings, there are 2 building permits currently in review and have been loaded into the record. And the height of the accessory structure, which is being converted to the accessory dwelling, is proposed at 17 feet and 6 inches. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, just, I'm looking at the site plan. So just so I understand everything, on the site plan, it shows the property as a rectangular shape, and on the right side, which I assume is the southeast side, there's a masonry building, and that is the accessory structure. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That requires the after-the-fact permit. And then to the left of that, or to the west of that, it's the site plan says masonry and frame house. Is that the building that is becoming the accessory dwelling?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And then to the left or the west of that, there's another 1-story masonry house and a pool and deck and patio. So that's
the dwelling.
The dwelling. Okay. All right. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Applicant?
I'm Leslie Van Trump, 1703 Village Court, Brandon, Florida. And this is our owner, Jan Boyd. Is it okay for us both to be up here?
It is. Ms. Boyd, be sure and put your address on the record too, please.
Okay. Just say your name and address.
Jan Boyd, 10208 Old Cone Grove Road, Riverview, Florida.
Thank you very much. And which one of you wishes to present the variance?
I will.
All right, Ms. Van Trump, go right ahead.
This is not a good situation. Ms. Boyd was widowed. Prior to her husband passing, he built a RV garage, the metal building in the rear. He hired a builder to do this. The builder did not pull a permit. Jan Boyd did not know that he didn't pull a permit until she got cited. This after Mr. Boyd was deceased. So she was cited for that building and also the accessory dwelling that we're going to call it, which she needs to remodel into a extended family. So as she ages, she doesn't have to be by herself. That building was existing, has always been there when she bought the property, but it does not meet primary dwelling setbacks. So we're asking for a side setback variance for that building so she can remodel it into a 900 square foot extended family. And then the rear garage metal building has to have primary structure setbacks because of the height. And it did take us a while to get the plans for the metal building. Code enforcement had to go after the builder before he would get the plans. So Ms. Boyd had to pay more money for the plans that he should have already done in the first place. And she's had to pay fines. This has cost her a lot of money, and she's just trying to get it straightened out and everything good on her property.
All right, thank you. How tall is the RV garage?
I think it's 17 feet. It's over the 15.
Okay.
But not by a whole lot.
Okay. Do you know when it was built? Roughly, the year?
20 or 21.
Okay.
No, it was
2020.
2020.
Okay.
It was at the beginning of COVID before Mr. Boyd died.
All right. And the accessory dwelling, or the proposed accessory dwelling, you said it will be 900 square feet?
Of living area. The building is larger than that, so the rest of it will be storage.
All right. Is it already used as an accessory dwelling?
No, ma'am.
Okay. What's it used for now?
Nothing.
Storage.
Okay. That's all my questions for you. Anything further?
Do you have anything to say?
No.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Y'all both please sign in with the clerk. Thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Don't hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Was there anyone? Someone was raising their hand back there. Was that just, okay. That was not intended to be a speaker. Okay, I understand. Do not hear anyone who wishes to speak. Then Development Services, anything further?
Just wanted to clarify for the record, the easternmost structure, the accessory structure, per the building plans for that structure, the overall height is 17 feet, 6 inches.
Thank you very much. All right, applicant, anything further you wish to put on the record? Ms. Van Trump, did you have anything further? No, okay. Thank you. We'll close the hearing then on variance 24-0378.
Next item is item H2, variance 24-0379. The applicant is Spring Engineering Incorporated. The request is a variance to lot development standards. Staff findings will be provided by Chris Granlenard.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to present application variance 24-0379. The applicant is requesting a height and setback variance to accommodate a proposed car dealership parking garage on a through lot zoned commercial intensive. The requested variances, first one is for LDC section 6.01.01. The LDC requirement is within the commercial intensive zoning district. The maximum height permitted is 50 feet. The variance they're requesting is 25 feet, resulting in a 75-foot building height. The second variance is also 6.01.01, but end node 8. Endnote 8, LDC requirement is structures with a permitted height greater than 20 feet shall be set back an additional 2 feet for every 1 foot of structure height over 20 feet. The additional setback shall be added to setbacks or buffers which function as a required rear and side yard. The proposed height of 75 feet requires a total side yard setback of 110 feet. They're requesting a variance of 74.5 feet, resulting in a 35.5-foot side yard setback to the east for the 75-foot tall building. That concludes my staff report. I'm glad to answer any questions.
So I'm looking at the site plan. So the east would be, that side yard is adjacent to another commercial property, is that correct?
Yes, it's surrounded by commercial.
Do you know?
It's in red, where the outline of the parking garage will be.
I see. Do you know of any other buildings in the surrounding area that are that high?
I do not have
If you
that
don't, that's okay.
information.
You might not have researched that.
The applicant may have that information.
I'll ask the applicant when it's their turn to speak. Thank you. I think that's all my questions for you then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, applicant?
Is it set? Can she see it? Good morning. Rich Beckish, Spring Engineering, 3014 US Highway 19, Holiday, Florida. I brought this PowerPoint to present this morning to clarify this. Can you see?
It is. It's on my
Okay,
screen. I
okay.
can see it.
Excellent. So I'm going to get to your question in just a minute. I have a rather thorough presentation to provide clarity to this request. But to start off with, as you can see on the screen, the site is located on the south side of Adamo Drive. It's what we refer to as Automotive Row. There are 12 new car franchises in this corridor between I-75 and 301. The current site is being used to support the Honda store there for Honda inventory storage. Subaru of North America has done their research and they've selected this location to put a new Subaru facility. So we've worked with Subaru to develop a site plan that you have in your possession, and I'm going to walk through that in a moment. The reason for the location is really the customer base in Hillsborough County. So as this corridor has intensified over the years, the number of Subaru owners has also increased. There's approximately 8,000 Subaru owners in this particular market. And interestingly enough, where the site is, about half of those are to the east of 75 and about half are to the west of 301. So that was the logic behind the Subaru decision. The next slide you have here, and again, the PowerPoint will be part of the record. You can see the parcel in question. You can also get a glimpse of the density and the character of that corridor in this aerial. The site consists of 10.2 acres. The particular eastern border of that site is the 3.2 acres where we're proposing to put Subaru. That particular area of the site is irregularly shaped. It's a very narrow site. It doesn't have very much depth. It's constrained on the north and the south by right-of-way. So you have Lunar Drive to the south and you have Adamo to the north. In 2017, DOT recognized the intensity of this corridor and they undertook a massive widening of Adamo. So they added the 3 lanes there with a bike lane, a continuous right turn lane, which took additional right-of-way from this parcel, making it even smaller than it was. So it created an additional hardship there.
Do you know how much was taken at that time?
A little over a quarter acre, I believe, was taken during the initial right-of-way acquisition.
Do you know the width from Adamo Drive?
I do not know that width. I would, if for a third lane, it was probably in the neighborhood of 40 feet because
Okay.
there's a bike lane there as well.
So 40 feet or so all the way across the frontage along Adamo?
That is correct.
All right,
and
thank you,
and
sir.
remember here also there's a continuous right turn lane, which makes this a unique arterial. So this gives you a little better perspective of the site. and before I jump to those pictures, I will just tell you that auto manufacturers have very specific minimum standards before they'll put a store in a particular market. And so they have minimums on the size of the showroom, the number of cars in the showroom, the number of F&I offices, the number of sales desks. But one of the most important things to them is the number of vehicles stored on the site. Because of the density and intensity of this market, those numbers have evolved. And we are having to seek this variance in order to accommodate those minimum standards for both Honda and Subaru. When you look...
So I'm sorry to stop you, but just to clarify, this is Subaru's standards for its facilities such as this.
We call them planning volume guides.
Okay.
And those are the minimums for this particular market given the demographics of the market.
And when was this property acquired by the owner?
The owner, I believe, has had this property for at least 10 years, if not longer.
And is the owner also Subaru, or is...
The owner is the Morgan Auto Group.
Okay.
And so Subaru designates the point, and then they select the dealer. So the Subaru controls the criteria of the actual site and what the physical environment looks like.
All right. So then just to clarify your testimony, the variance is being sought to accommodate Subaru's standards for its facilities.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Those minimum standards, which have evolved because of the character of this particular market. As the market density and intensity has increased, you have roughly 50,000 cars a day now traveling on Atomo. The automotive requirements have also increased in alignment with that. So when this property was purchased, the standards would have been much lower back then. But if you take a look at the aerial and you look at the top picture, if you look at the top left corner in that picture, you'll see a building in the background. That is a commercial office building, which is 120 feet tall. So it's 45 feet taller than our request. So there is a precedent there for this type of height. We will be substantially lower than that.
Where is that building again?
Are you looking at the screen?
I am.
You see the top image? If you
Yes.
look at the top image, the building in the background there.
Okay.
So that building's been there for 30 years, and that's a commercial office building.
Did that used to be was it a hotel or something?
As far as I know, was permitted as a commercial office building under a PD. I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but I
Okay.
wanted you to be aware of that. I also want you to be aware of in the mercantile zoning district, which is immediately adjacent and contiguous to this property, the allowable height there is 110 feet. So it's substantially higher than the CI district. So I'm going to get to that in just a moment, but I wanted you to understand the context of the site first. Any other questions about the height before I move on to the middle picture?
And I think I did see that building in the background there when I was reviewing this case before the hearing. So I'm aware of that one, and you said it's 110 feet high.
That building's 120 feet high.
120, thank you.
And the manufacturing zoning district allows 110 feet high, which I'll get to into another slide here, but I just wanted to point that out to you.
And why is that relevant, that the manufacturing zoning district allows 110 feet high?
It's adjacent north and south of us, contiguous to our property.
Okay, thank you.
So getting back to this slide, if you look at the eastern boundary, there's an image of what that looks like now from the hotel looking into our site. There's an 8-foot masonry wall, which is unfinished, unstuccoed, unpainted, and a chain link fence and no landscape buffer. And then you have the southern property line, which is illustrating that existing stormwater system that we have there that we're maintaining on Lunar Drive. Just real quick on the zoning, as you can see in the pink, we have zoning of CI to the east and the west, which is the only zoning that allows automotive sales and service. In this category, that's why there's this density and character along Atomo. The arrow is pointing to where that Subaru site would be located. And then under the UMU category, this entire district is UMU from 301 all the way out to I-75. So there's a consistency in that land use there. And within the UMU, you have the 110 foot also allowed within that. So it's consistent with what we're asking for. Now, this next exhibit packs a lot of information. I'll go through it real quickly. On the top left corner, you see in pink, those are all the CI zone parcels in the corridor. Below that, you have a yellow boundary. Those are the parcels that have direct access to Adamo. In blue is the Subaru and the Honda site. And then below that, you have the green. And the green is illustrating the two M parcels that I was speaking to earlier, which allow the 110 feet as a basic right under that zoning. And then each parcel's numbered and referenced in that chart that you see. And the idea here behind the exhibit is to give you a real feel for the character of the corridor, which is heavily automotive, and to illustrate the uses. So to summarize it, the corridor itself is roughly 2.6 miles. Within that corridor right now, there are 12 new car dealerships representing all the major brands in America. There are 20 auto-related businesses in that corridor right now. The average size of 15 of those 20 parcels is 8.75 acres. That's just for one use, not a dual franchise location. 8 of those automotive parcels are larger in size than the subject parcel at question today. So what we're trying to do here is just illustrate for you the character of that environment on Adamo, what the size of those parcels are, the relationship of the dimensions and distance from the parcel to ours, and the fact that based upon our unique size, width, and depth, this is a really unique parcel. It's not like the other parcels in the corridor. So the architecture had to go hand in hand with this planning exercise. So we integrated the garage design with the Subaru store. We had to run all this through Subaru's corporate headquarters first in order to get to where we are today. We did our very best as we were designing this to minimize any other variances. So if you look at the design, you can see how we stepped it back in order to prevent another variance on the front side. And we've integrated that structure into the image criteria of Subaru. The garage itself will be very similar to the design we used on Jerry Ohm Dodge for Dale Mabry. If you've seen that facility with the jewel boxes, this will be very similar to that. So all around this facility, there will be an integrated design. It won't look like a typical parking garage. If you were to try to duplicate the car requirement for this parking garage at grade, you'd need about 7.5 acres to do that. So there are some environmental benefits for doing this. We're going to minimize, obviously, the impervious area and reduce the stormwater impacts. And we'll be bringing those cars off the front line and putting them into the parking garage. So getting into the two variances, the first variance, is, as Chris mentioned, is a 25-foot variance to the height. And that's pretty straightforward. The maximum height in this district is 50 feet. And as you can see, the garage is going up 75 feet. That's triggered by those two levels, the 5th and 6th level. And that's 6.01.01 code section. Now, tied to that, obviously, in the CI district, you understand there's a 2-to-1 ratio after 20 feet, which necessitates the side yard setback. What's important about this exhibit to point out is that side yard setback. If you look at your screen, you see the little red line, which is in the bottom southern half of the parcel. That is the only area, that's 40% of your eastern property line, that will actually have the side yard setback.
All right, so that's about, you're talking about the red line, that's about halfway down in this graphic illustration, about halfway down in the site plan?
That is correct.
And goes further?
Yes.
Okay.
And you see where it stops at the stormwater?
Yes.
So that is 40% of the eastern boundary line, and that is the only area that will be impacted by the side yard setback, and of course, that is triggered by the height and the 2-to-1 ratio. The rest of the site, 60% of that side yard, eastern side yard, will not have any variance impact at all. So it's all fully compliant. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So just in summary, on the 6 conditions for 11.04.00, these are in additions to the conditions that we've already stated in our written application, and I'm not going to read them verbatim, but I just want to go through because I think we've provided substantial evidence to support these variances. The parcel, as I've stated, is very unique in its geometric shape. It's narrow. It doesn't have much depth. It's bordered on two sides by public right-of-way. And it had an FDOT taking, which created an additional hardship here. The physical circumstances and existing conditions, if you were to implement the strict compliance of the zoning code, they're going to prevent the ability to have a Subaru store there. And quite honestly, right now in the automotive world, most dealerships are going up vertically, and they're using less land horizontally. So there is a trend in the automotive world to go up vertically to accommodate these parking requirements. The two variances, if authorized, will clearly not impair the adjacent properties or create any safety or welfare issues. As demonstrated, the two variances, if authorized, will clearly not alter the existing character of this corridor, hence the reason why I included that corridor analysis. I think the corridor analysis clearly illustrates what that corridor looks like. And honestly, I think the addition of the Subaru facility will actually enhance that corridor. The variance is needed. It was not created by any action of the applicant, illegal action or unlawful action. It's really based upon growth of this corridor. And the variance represents, as I indicated in my earlier statements, that it's the minimum needed to make this work and function as a Subaru facility. Again, those are all in addition to our written application criteria that we initially submitted. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I also have 3 letters of support from other business owners in the corridor who are competitors of Subaru, but they felt the need to write these letters, so I will present them to you for the record. And the PowerPoint will also be submitted as part of the record.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and you've been very thorough with your presentation. I do still have a couple of questions or issues that I would like for you to address. First of all, do you know, are there any other buildings that you know of? Is it just that 120-foot high building, and I believe it's actually to the south? Are there any other buildings in the surrounding area that come close to the height that this one is requesting?
We are not aware of any other buildings that are close. Now, when you say close, there is a parking garage directly behind this, which I think is roughly 35 feet. So it's 15 feet or so shorter than what the code allows. And then there's also a garage on the JLR project to the west, again, around 30 feet or so, 35 feet. But keep in mind that if you go back to this exhibit here, this is an important exhibit because if you look directly to the north.
Okay, and it's not showing on my screen yet. There it is. I see it now.
The property directly to the north and property directly to the south, the 110-foot is allowed in those two corridors right there.
In the manufacturing.
Yes.
And thank you for bringing that up again. You said that the CI zoning district is the only zoning district that allows this use. Is that
the
correct?
automotive sales and service.
Sales and service, okay.
Now, see, the manufacturing district allows the commercial sales and service, but not domestic vehicles.
Not, okay.
And they will allow a commercial sales and service facility to go to 110 feet.
Okay. Okay, I understand that distinction. The other thing that I would like for you to address is I'm aware of cases, of course, that where courts have decided on a variance that if property owner purchases a property knowing the size of the property and the limitations of its size and shape and use, and then designs a building, a facility, whatever, that is too big and seeks a variance, courts have found that that is a case of a self-imposed hardship. So if this is a case where Subaru has decided this is a perfect place for this facility, and yet the site limitations won't allow this facility and it seeks a variance to accommodate its own requirements, how is that not a self-imposed hardship?
So this is a very good question, and there's some case law, and I'm an architect, not an attorney.
I understand.
But the courts have demonstrated that the character and the intensity changes in corridors actually are considered hardships. So when the applicant had this property initially, you know, just by virtue of the fact that DOT has taken this corridor from 20,000 trips a day to now 50, which they projected to be 80, that has changed the character of the corridor. So this applicant, when he purchased this property thinking that he'd be able to put another dealership there, did it with the full intent of thinking at the time that it would meet the criteria. Today it doesn't meet the criteria because the county's growing so fast. And so when you look at the population density and the increase in traffic on the corridor, I would argue that that is actually truly a hardship, and there's case law to support that.
Okay. Thank you very much for addressing that. I don't have any other questions for you. And just be sure to sign in with the clerk. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Please come forward, thank you.
Good morning, Paul Gomez, 9816 East Adamo Drive. I am the general manager at Volkswagen Brandon, again, at 9816 Adamo Drive. We are located just 1/10 of a mile east of the proposed site. We fully back the 100% approval of these revisions for the Subaru store in our corridor. Our corridor is known as Auto Row, and I believe the approval of these revisions will bring benefit to our business as well as like-minded businesses in our corridor. With our lots being small, going up allows immediate growth and a brighter future for our businesses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, thank you. And applicant, do you have anything further, please?
I don't have anything further unless you have questions for me.
All right, thank you very much. Then this closes the hearing on variance 24-0379.
Next item is item H3, variance 240391. The applicant is Hillsborough County Real Estate Department. The request is a variance to Citrus Park Village development standards. Staff findings will be provided by Carolyn Peddle.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Carolyn Peddle, Development Services. This is variance 240391. The applicant requests multiple variances in order to build a fire station in the Citrus Park Village Overlay District.
Ms. Peddle, please pull the microphone towards you just a little bit. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. So there's going to be a total of 14 requests, so please stop me if I need to slow down. All right, so the first request is for Section 310-0601. The new development shall occur in a block pattern. Each block shall be rectangular in shape and framed by public streets on at least 3 sides. The maximum length of any block face shall be 650 feet. The request is for a variance of 35 feet. For Section 310-0607, the front of all principal buildings shall face an improved street right-of-way and shall not be separated from the right-of-way by another building, stormwater facility, or common parking area. Accessory buildings are not required to face a street right-of-way, but they shall be placed in the side or rear of the principal building they serve. So the request is to allow an accessory structure to be permitted between the principal structure and the right-of-way. Again, for Section 310-0607, on parcels with multiple street frontages, buildings shall face the street with the higher functioning classification or block face, with relatively greater length to the maximum extent possible before facing another street. Variances to these frontage requirements may be approved in accordance with Section 1104 of this code, only for projects with unusual site constraints, which restrict the number or shape of the block which may be created. In such cases, however, the developer shall be required to create a maximum number of blocks possible to provide the greatest amount of street frontage for the proposed structure. The request is to not create a new block to this requirement. For Section 310-0608, and yards with required build-to lines, the entire length of the building facade containing enclosed floor space shall be placed to the build-to line. The request is to eliminate requirement for entire length of the building facade to be placed to that build-to line. LDC section 310-0609, all accessory uses, including but not limited to parking and stormwater facilities, shall be located to the rear of the principal structure on a parcel. The request is to allow parking and stormwater facilities to be located to the side of the principal structure. For section 310-14A1, except for storefronts as regulated in section 310-14B, at least 20% of the area of each first-story wall on the front and sides of the structure shall be comprised of windows. So there's 3 requests for this one. Request 1 is 7% window reduction to the southern facade. The second one is 5% window reduction to the east facade. And the third is 20% window reduction to the western facade. Again, for section 310-14A1, windows shall be defined with shutters, raised exterior cladding, trims, awnings, decorative pendants, and similar treatments. The request is for windows to be defined without shutters or raised exterior treatments. Section 310-14A1, doorways shall be defined with arches, raised exterior cladding, trim, side lighting, or similar treatments. In addition to the window space requirement above, at least 20% of the wall shall be comprised of window treatments, doors, doorway treatments, structural canopies, balconies, and architectural expressions. Such expressions or enhancements shall be a minimum projection or a recess of 2 inches from the wall surface. The request is to replace the requirement with wall area containing 3-foot band of brick veneer to visually break up the facade material and brick veneer extending up along the columns in between the garage doors. Section 310-14C, exterior cladding. All exterior surfaces shall be architecturally finished. Paint shall not constitute as an architecturally finish. The request is to allow exterior surfaces to be architecturally finished with surfaces to include painted cement plaster. Section 310-14L, surface parking areas, loading docks, and garage doors shall be located at the rear of the structure, and on corner lots shall be no closer to any side street right-of-way than the structure, notwithstanding garage doors and doorways for emergency public use facilities such as fire stations. The request is to allow surface parking area to the side of the structure. For section 310-1501, the front yard shall have a 0-foot build-to line, except that where a front yard functions as a rear yard, no build-to line or maximum setback will be required. The request is to allow a maximum setback of 50 feet. And the last request is for 310-1501, the minimum 2-story requirement for buildings fronting Gun Highway. And the request is to allow for 1 story. That's the end of my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
All right, just briefly, and that is, from reviewing this request with all these variances, it's clear that the purpose of this is to allow a fire station to be built on this site.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
That's all I have for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, applicant.
Good morning. Isabel Albert with 1000 Street, North Ashley Drive, representing Hillsborough County Real Estate Department. And I have a presentation here that'll just be a bit easier to follow. Okay, so here's the site. It's located on Elric Road, north of the county. It's comprised of 7 properties. It's also located within the Citrus Park Village Overlay District and in the urban service area. More specifically, the future land use is also Citrus Park Village, which envisions traditional Main Street commercial, office, residential, and public facilities. And as you stated earlier, the request is for a fire station to be constructed in this location. You see here, this is the site. It borders 2 streets, and hence why a lot of these variances are being requested. And also, this is for a fire station which have very specific requirements for building interior and as such, and we're going to go through that. So here's the fire station that's being proposed. So obviously it's the block length. You have a maximum block length of 650 feet, and we're not going to redesign the block, so we're requesting a variance of 35 feet to maintain the block length. We're also requesting a variance to allow an enclosed structure located on the north side, and it is because no structures like that are permitted between the main building and the front, and this, in this case, has two fronts, to the north and to the south.
And what is that structure?
It's an enclosed storage.
Okay.
Yep. The build to line. This is, again, for operational purposes. The bays are located further away, not on the property line, to allow visual once they come out. This is going to be their exit. They enter from the north and come out to the south. So therefore, this design and for the operation of the fire station. Furthermore, we're requesting a variance to allow the parking area and stormwater pond on the side of the structure. This is an irregular shape, narrow site, and therefore that is the best location to put those uses. There's also these requirements for building facades, and it really comes down to, there's three of them there. It really comes down to aesthetics, and they're trying to make it, the reasoning for having 20% of windows and breakup and everything. But in this case, again, it's for a fire station. There's requirements, for example, on the west side, we have no windows there, and that's because that's the bay for the trucks, which are $1 million trucks, and therefore they have to be an enclosed, secure area. And you'll have that, but we tried to, wherever it was, along the street, the main street, where you had the most visual of windows and as such. The windows, they have to have shutters, they have these requirements, but with the architectural style of this business, these types of windows just felt like it fits there, but they are kind of, just have a little ledge around it to try to comply with this regulation. Doorways, similar situation. The idea is to not have a continuous blank wall facade, and therefore the architect, in working with the county, the fire department, were able to come up with this design. This design has already been built, and the interior and everything, the function of it goes well, and so they tried to apply that. And by breaking it up with a little wall on the side, on the bottom of the building, that are contiguous also to the horizontal on the main entrance and on the bay area. Exterior cladding, we have painted stucco, but again, with the brick wall cutting it, just enhanced a little bit more the design of the structure. Parking and loading, we've covered that, but it's also another requirement, another section. This as well. The 2 stories, and so understanding that the fire station is typically just 1 story, and for operational purposes as well. But they tried to have this enhanced design up front, try to show that maybe, yes, it's not just one unified story. They enhanced it with this architectural detail. And overall, looking at it, the hardship is unique, it's singular to the subject property, are not those suffered in common with others properties similarly located. And this is because of the special use, the use that it's being used for, or built for. The requirements will deprive the rights of the property owner to function as a secured fire station, and therefore that's why we are requesting all these design variances. It will not interfere or injure the rights of others for their properties. The request will provide other solutions that meets the intent of the Section 310, which is what we try to provide, other solutions for that. The site is currently vacant, and so we haven't built it yet, so it's not a excuse me, it's not a self-impact variance. And we believe that Justin will be done and serve if these are all approved.
All right, just a couple of questions for you. When
Sure.
did the county acquire this site?
It was recently, because when I started doing the paperwork, it was still under the process of going through this.
Okay.
But they have acquired all the sites.
So, similar question as I had to the previous variance request, and that is, because I'm aware of cases where courts have found that when a property owner acquires a property and then designs a facility or a building that's essentially too large for the property or has to request variances in order to fit, courts have found that to be a self-imposed hardship. So how is it in this case that this is not a self-imposed hardship, or you could just make some arguments that it isn't to address that issue?
It is a very good question. So the county doesn't have it's difficult to find sites and difficult to find locations. So this was a kind of studied of where they could be located. This was a good location. And the self-hardship it's really first of all, the operation, the 2 stories. You cannot have a 2-story for a fire station.
And who designs the fire station? Who sets those standards or those regulations or requirements?
I am not exactly sure where those regulations come from, but I know that working through this process is with the architect who does a lot of work for fire stations and the chief of Hillsborough County and talking with them. And I did ask them, for example, like the 2 stories, what's up with that? And they just explained that they all have to be linear. They have to function within so many seconds. And therefore, the whole interior of the building is designed to meet those requirements.
Okay, so for the function of a fire station.
It's the function of the fire station, yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, okay. You'll see, which unbeknownst to me, but one of the walls, there was no windows. And I was like, well, isn't that their sleeping quarters? And they said, yes. They do not want light coming in. This is their cave, and they need those moments that's very silent, very quiet, to recuperate between doing their job.
In the process of preparing for this variance, was the issue addressed as for the need for this use in this location? Is there any question of the need for a fire station in this area?
I did not go into that, but I would think that there is a need for the amount of work and study they've done to purchase and get that site.
Okay. All right. Anything further?
Don't think so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And be sure and sign in with the clerk. All right. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? I do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
All right, and applicant, you had nothing further, is that correct? All right, thank you. So this closes the hearing on variance 24-0391.
This brings us to section I, special uses. Item I1, special use 240087. The applicant is HB Alliance LLC. The request is a special use for a community residential home. Staff findings will be provided by Jared Folan after presentation by the applicant. Jillian Massey will present Planning Commission findings.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have copies of our presentation to hand out if that's okay, if I pass it.
Yes, that's fine. Hand those out now. Thank you.
Good morning. Simone Savino with Stearns Weaver Miller, located at 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 2100. I'm here on behalf of the applicant and property owner, HB Alliance LLC. Our request today is to approve a special use permit for a community residential home type B to serve up to 12 residents. The property is currently utilized as a community residential home type A facility, and they currently serve 6 residents. The home is licensed by the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, APD, and they provide residential and community support to individuals with developmental or intellectual disabilities. The intent is to provide them with a meaningful life in both a home and community setting. The proposed changes would allow for the same type of personal care services that are currently provided as a CRH type A, but the ability to serve up to 12 residents instead of the 6 that are currently in the home. So the general location, this property is located at 19115 Livingston Avenue. The address on the packet from staff had just the incorrect address stated at the top. So this is actually 19115. This property is located in the community plan, the Lutz Community Plan area in the Lutz Rural Development Special District. It's in the unincorporated county. And as you can see from this image, it's located south of East County Line Road off of Livingston Avenue. So more specifically, here we are zoomed into the site. It's a 4.99 acre site, and it encompasses 2 folios. Folio 33417.0100 is where the primary structure is located that would include the special use. And folio 33418.0200 is the folio that would allow for ingress and egress to the project. You can see the smaller parcel is the ingress egress. Just to point out, this property is mostly surrounded by residential. It's to the north, south, and east. There's some pasture to the northeast as corner. There's a place of religious assembly to the west, kind of in the pocket of our ingress-egress parcel. Zoning and future land use. So the property is zoned ASC1, agricultural single-family conventional, and it has a future land use of R1. Compliance with the LDC. So these types of CRH applications must comply with Section 61128 of the Hillsborough County Community Residential Home Standards of Approval. I've listed the standards there that apply to a Type B CRH, and we believe we meet all the standards. But just to point out a few, we must not be located to result in a concentration of other CRHs in the area. I have a slide that just goes through the distance separation requirements after this. We must be licensed by the Florida Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services, which we currently are with the APD licensure. Must provide adequate parking and comply with Section 60502E, which requires 1 parking space per employee of the largest shift, plus 1 parking space per facility vehicle, plus a 0.2 parking spaces per resident, which we believe we meet. Must be designed and built to appear similar to a residential structure as possible. This looks like a home, residential home. And then also, we have to have this conceptual site plan requirements that must be met with including specific information for data and graphics. I have the next slide is our site plan. I also have a larger image here with me if we need to zoom in. I don't know if it's necessary. But you can see on our site plan, the entrance, ingress, egress parcel leads to the parking area and the main structure. There's another frame building at the south of the property, but that's not intended or being requested to be used for the special use. That just has some covered screened area, and they're using it for storage. So the special use would be in that main parcel, and we believe that everything that's noted on the site plan currently meets the standards of the county requirements for this. So additional compliance with the LDC. The application complies with section 5.2.1.2, which speaks to distance separation requirements for a CRH type B. It must be within a 1,200-foot radius, must not be within a 1,200-foot radius of another type B, C CRH in a multifamily zone, which we meet. I have some images for this. I don't know if you need to see the actual measurements, but I can provide them if you'd like.
I'm sorry. You can just go ahead with your presentation, and I have seen your documentation in the file as well.
Okay, wonderful.
And I know it's in the record.
Okay. And then we must also be within 500 feet of an area of non-agricultural RSC single-family zoning. And we meet both of these requirements. So we've worked with Michael Yates of Palm Traffic Engineering. He's helped us submit 2 administrative variances to comply with transportation's requirements for access spacing and existing facility requirements. He is present today if we have any questions in that regard. Both of those administrative variances have been approved subject to special use approval. There are currently listed as 23 conditions associated with this application, which we are absolutely fine with. We don't have any questions or any concerns about them. I do have one comment. Some of the conditions language are just repeated. So condition 5 looks like it's repeated at condition 18. Condition 6 looks like it's repeated at condition 19. 7's repeated at 20, and 8 looks like it's repeated at 21. 9 is repeated at 22. So without those repeats, it looks like we would have 18 conditions. Even if they don't get removed, we're still fine with them. I just wanted to point that out to staff. I had reached out just before the hearing, but we just haven't had a chance to discuss that. I wanted to thank staff for their assistance in helping us maneuver through the application process for this. They've been able to provide us with consistency across the board. There's been no objection, and this approval seems to just be subject to the conditions on our slide previous to this. And I'm available for any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you. I did review your application and the documentation that is in the record. I believe you addressed the special use criteria. I just want to make sure we are clear. The applicant does accept the conditions. You pointed out that there appears to be some repeat language, but the applicant does accept the conditions in the staff report.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Make sure to sign in with the clerk. All right, Development Services.
Good morning, Jared Fallon with Development Services. Just get right into it. The subject parcel, it's in a rural setting area. It's in the Lutz Rural Development planned area. It's near the northern boundary of the county. The property is currently zoned ASC 1, as long as also the other properties around it. Mostly single family with a church to the west. The buffer and screening that they're providing, all sides will have a type A screening that is going to be 5 feet wide. Except for the church, they have a 10-foot wide, but that's already provided. The parcel is heavily vegetated with lots of mature trees. It helps with screening to the other properties on all sides. There's also wetlands to the south for additional screening. The existing home that they'll be utilizing is about 500 feet from the roadway, so it's not visible from that street. And no agencies have rejected the request, and Development Services find it compatible with the area. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. No questions for you.
Thank you.
All right, Planning Commission.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Officer Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located in the Residential 1 Future Land Use category. It's in the rural area and within the limits of the Lutz Community Plan. Within rural areas, future land use element policy 4.1 allows for densities higher than 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres if they're identified with a higher density land use category on the map. The subject site's located within the residential 1 category and contains only one single-family home. Therefore, the request is consistent with this policy direction. Future land use element policy 20.6 says that the land development code shall include placed person to dwelling unit conversion factors for congregate living facilities, and the request for 12 beds is below the maximum density permitted for this category. The site's surrounded by residential 1 on all sides and is predominantly mainly surrounded by agricultural uses, a church, a daycare center, single-family neighborhoods, and vacant residential land. The proposed special use meets the intent of Objective 16 and associated policies. It includes appropriate setbacks and buffers. In addition, the site is naturally wooded throughout and has approximately 1.41 acres of wetlands and conservation area that serves as a buffer from the surrounding properties. Per future land use element policy 17.1, residential support uses must be compatible with the surrounding land uses and zoning per the design, intensity, and scale. And a community residential home qualifies as this type of use. Per future land use element policy 20.5, the development of congregate living facilities will be allowed with each of the land use plan categories that permit residential development, which the residential one does do that. The proposed special use meets the intent of the Lutz community plan. The characteristics of the site preserve open space and maintain a semi-rural environment as the existing building footprint is not changing. And based on these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds that the proposed special use is consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Just want to clarify, it looks like when the transportation conditions were added into the conditions of approval, that they were added twice. So we could go ahead and eliminate 18 through 22. Those are duplicates of 5 through 9, and provide an updated report. And there was a typo on the first page. The 191 should be 15.
Okay.
And we'll update that report in optics as well for you.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that. All right, applicant, anything further?
Nothing further, and I thank staff for reviewing the conditions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, this will close the hearing on special use CRH 24-0087. We have 2 more cases. We are going to take a quick break. So 5 minutes. 5 minutes, not long, y'all. We just got to take 5 minutes. We'll be right back. Thank you. Would everyone have your seat, please? Everyone have your seat and quiet down, please. All right, we're reconvening. This is the March 25th, 2024 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. And we are back in session. We're ready to hear the next case.
Madam Hearing Officer, given the citizens coming in from the overflow room, we may want to swear in anyone that has not been sworn.
All right,
I believe
we'll
it's
do
gonna be
that.
pretty
Thank
heavy.
you. Thank you for that reminder.
The next item is item I2, special use 240280. The applicant is Skyway Towers, LLC. The request is a special use for a wireless communication facility and variance to buffer and screening requirements. Staff findings will be presented by Sam Ball after presentation by the applicant. Jillian Massey will present Planning Commission findings.
Thank you.
Good morning, Jamie Mayer of the law firm Hillward Henderson, representing the applicant, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700, and I have been sworn. We have a couple of packets to distribute, one for the hearing officer and one for the county attorney.
All right, thank you. And actually, maybe we should do that swearing in right now before we proceed ahead. So testimony taken today must be under oath. So if anyone is in the room or online and you plan to speak, please raise your hand to be sworn in. Well, stand and raise your hand to be sworn in, I should say, if you're able. All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right.
I do.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you, applicant. Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. This is a request for a 195-foot monopole wireless communication facility structure. It is proposed to be a pine tree camouflage design, which is required by code, and there are no waivers requested to the required separation from residential uses or to the setbacks. There is, the only relief we're requesting is a variance, which is to the general land development code, landscaping, buffering and screening requirements, which apply throughout the code for a use-to-use buffer, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but it doesn't relate specifically to the tower code. The subject property is outlined in red. It is approximately 10 acres in size, and it is the home of the principal use, which is the Philippine Cultural Foundation and their Arts and Events Center. The yellow box in the north approximates the location of the tower lease area. So this is a leased area. The Philippine Cultural Foundation is, we would call them the landlord in this case. And as you can see, the tower is tucked up near the tree coverage to the north. This is a closer view of the site plan. You can see that there will be a new access drive constructed for the sole purpose of accessing the compound, as was recommended by transportation staff. And you can see in the black and white drawing, the location of the tower is pointed to with the red arrow relative to the rest of the compound and the areas where the service providers locate their equipment. Again, I want to reiterate that we are not asking for relief from land development code standards applicable to a tower. In fact, the reason that this is a special use permit is because of its proximity to the boundary of a PD that has residential uses in it, but the area of the PD that it is that triggers that proximity is not developable for residential use. It is platted, recorded conservation area. So therefore, under the code, the standard AR zoning district setbacks apply. We meet all of those. I will also note, though, that the tower is well over 100%. In fact, I believe it's twice its height at least from the nearest residential structures.
Who owns that residentially, or that residential PD that is not developable as residential uses?
I believe it's CDD or HOA-owned property.
Okay, thank you.
The comprehensive plan encourages compatibility, states that towers should comply with applicable LDC provisions. As I've mentioned, this tower is camouflaged as required, It meets the setbacks and the separations that are required, and it's screened by an existing masonry wall, mature trees, and structures on the property, and generally meets the other land development code regulations that apply to a tower. The community plan in this area encourages adequate infrastructure to support neighborhoods and town centers and balances responsibility for those infrastructure between both private and public sectors. And of course, this is a private provider. Per the propagation maps provided by the applicant, the area of the tower is in this spot here. Yes, you can see me circling it. As you can see, there's a gap in reliable in-building residential and in-vehicle 5G coverage. This is the after. So you can see, based on the existing network in this broader area, the proposed tower fills that gap. Now, as is required in the Land Development Code, both the applicant and the third-party consultant hired by the county to independently review these types of applications had to determine whether there were existing structures within a mile radius of the property on which they could locate the desired antenna that would provide this service. Both parties, the independent third party and the applicant, underwent that review, and they did not find a structure on which a new antenna could be added that would provide and function in reasonable parity with the proposed location. Now, we are aware, of course, of the opposition in the record. We've reviewed the concerns, and you'll hear it characterize this request as extreme, extraordinary, unusual, unprecedented. Despite compatibility findings and consistency findings from staff. And of course, as I've mentioned, the height is permitted by the code. 200 feet is the maximum.
What is the height again?
It's 195.
Okay, could you go back one slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I thought I saw 185 there.
That is the RAD, this is engineering speak, I think, but RAD center. So there's going to be 4 antenna required to co-locate. So the highest, actually the top of the lightning rod is 195, the top of the tower is 190, and then you have that RAD center.
Okay, thank you.
So to give you some context about structures, towers in particular, of comparable height, comparable location relative to residential uses, to schools and other types of uses in a broader radius around this site, I wanted to just show you a few towers in the area. This is a tower that's actually within the Nine Eagles subdivision further north, and it is on that propagation map actually that I showed you that makes up that existing coverage network. And these are just, again, examples, show towers kind of go wherever they can go, and they're screened in various ways, some more than others. This is near a school. As you can see, it's in a park, and it's very close to a residential subdivision. This is near the Ed Radis Sports Complex and residential uses. Across the street from residential. And this is on a church site near a preschool and residential uses. We understand concerns related to aesthetics and the environment. Natural resources staff and EPC, of course, reviewed, issued conditions, but no objection, the conditions that apply standard at time of development permit review. Again, the pine tree camouflage design under the LDC is required, and it's presumed compatible in the AR zoning district. So we're providing the camouflage that's required and is compatible. The county in their staff report did provide a line of sight analysis that demonstrates how the tree coverage in the area mitigates views from the closest residences to the structure. That is in your staff report, but I also have an image of it to show on the screen. And you have seen, of course, what I just showed you, towers of similar height, very much in view throughout the community. This is the county, from the county staff report, but I think it demonstrates well how the approximate 50-foot tree line that surrounds the property, as well as abuts most of the residences closest to where the tower exists, which is the closest being about 440 feet away from the ground. That tree line significantly mitigates the view.
Okay, let's stay on this slide just a couple of minutes. The closest residential use, and I understand there's zoning, but actual use is how far away from the tower?
So that's the 445, and I can go back to the broader area if that would be helpful for context.
Okay, these I think illustrate what I want to see. So for example, at the top, that top box, if a person were standing on that residential use to my right of those trees and looking towards the tower, does this demonstrate that that person would not be able to see the tower from their property?
That is what I understand, but this was prepared by staff. I think that would be a question for staff to confirm that, but that's how I understood them, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
As I mentioned, we are requesting an associated variance. This is, obviously it's, part of this request, but it is decided under separate criteria. It runs, parallel kind of with the special use permit and doesn't weigh on those standards. There is a standard 20-foot type B landscaping buffer that would be required around the tower compound itself. Candidly, this would do very little for anybody other than the landlord, and the landlord has entered into a lease to have a tower on their property, and a row of trees is not going to do very much for them. In fact, what it will do is deprive them of an additional 20 feet of space around the compound. You can see the sheds, these belong to the landlord, their existing access drive, et cetera. And where this tower compound is located is not only good for the fact that it's closest to the trees and therefore has the ability to blend as much as possible, but it also stays out of the way of what's already been developed there on the site. It is unique to locate a tower, of course, on a site that's already developed. You are dealing with constraints because you don't have control over the way it's been developed. Again, it would be more of a detriment to the landlord than it would be protective to the landlord. And this is a mutually agreeable location, and it is also, as I mentioned, it is the best location for it for the surrounding area as well on this site, as it relates to being as far away from the residential uses on either side as possible. I know there's concerns about the school. Putting it in the northernmost part of the site puts it as far away from that as well. That is 1,700 feet away. And so we find this variance independently justifiable and request your approval of that as well. I will note this wireless communication towers, and I'm sure this is not the first time you have heard this, they are heavily regulated under a scheme of federal and state legislature. The federal standard prohibits consideration of testimony regarding radio frequency emissions, that's RF emissions is what you'll typically hear, as long as there is evidence that the tower will meet FCC regulations regarding RF emissions. The state regulation limits the local government's review and their code to zoning issues only related to towers. We meet the zoning regulations. There is a letter in your packet, and we also have an RF engineer here who can confirm that the tower will meet FCC standards. It is required. Therefore, no additional consideration of RF emissions can be heard in this determination. One thing I will note, and we discussed with staff, I'll read into the record and I'll also provide, we have an additional condition to add regarding the structural engineering of the tower and as it relates to 9 Eagles Drive. So I'll just read that now. We're going to be adding this wherever staff wants to put it in the list of conditions. Prior to the issuance of development permits, the permit holder shall submit documentation from a licensed structural engineer which demonstrates that, in the event of collapse, the tower is designed to fall within the confines of the subject property boundary. And I will include that in the record. So again, this is a request that meets the Land Development Code requirements for a wireless tower. The height that is proposed is permitted. The setbacks and separation that are required are met. The camouflage design is required and is of a type that is presumed compatible in the zoning district. The variance pertains to general landscaping criteria, and it's not a tower requirement, but we find it independently justifiable. You have a staff report, an excellent staff report with consistency findings and compatibility and a recommendation of approval. We respectfully request your approval as well, and I would like to hold my remaining time for rebuttal. Thank you.
All right, I would like to ask one thing, and that is, you said you have an RF expert here. I would like for them to put on the record their credentials. There's a statement of their credentials is fine, or if you have the resume, put it in the record. And I would like for them to just state their opinion on the record as to whether this tower meets the RF requirements.
Yes.
And your name and address, please, sir.
Yes, good morning. My name is Byron Elkins. My address is 5901 Benjamin Center Drive, Tampa, 336 534, and I have been sworn. So, my credentials are, I've been with T-Mobile in the design engineering office for 25 years in this market. And prior to that, in my formal training as a Department of Defense, U.S. Air Force for 8 years.
Okay. And your opinion as to whether this tower request meets the RF requirements? I guess it's the FCC.
It does. It meets all FCC requirements, and it also meets our design objectives for this area.
Thank you. And I believe we have your statement, printed statement on the record too as well, don't we? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please, both of you, sign in with the clerk.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Development Services.
Good morning, Sam Ball of Development Services. The applicant is requesting a special use permit for a 195-foot tall wireless communication facility with tree-type camouflage to be located within 250 feet of a residential planned development zoning district. The application includes a variance to buffer and screening requirements to eliminate the required 20-foot type B buffer between the facility compound and the properties to the north, south, and east. The AR zoned property is located along the east side of 9 Eagles Drive, approximately 0.3 miles north of Racetrack Road. The property is surrounded by 3 large planned developments that have been developed for single-family attached and single-family detached use. There are significant areas of wetland cover that adjoin the properties, that cover the adjoining properties. The large mixed-use node located approximately 0.3 miles to the south is developed for freestanding and strip retail, medical office, single-family attached and single-family detached office, light industrial, and school use. Bryant Elementary and Farnell Middle School are located approximately 1,650 feet south of the proposed communication facility compound area. The AR zoning district designation allows for wireless communication facilities through a special use pursuant to LDC section 10020 for facilities with a height range of 100 to 200 feet when located within 250 feet of a residential PD zoning district. The table of intensity for buffers and screening requires that communication facilities are a Group 5 use. The neighboring properties to the north, south, and east are Group 1 use. The required buffer screening between a Group 5 and a Group 1 use is a 20-foot buffer with a type B screening. The applicant has submitted documentation indicating the need for the facility at a height of 195 feet for the desired coverage area and capacity needs, and that no other existing facilities are available for co-location pursuant to LDC section 61129. OCG, the outside expert, has reviewed the support materials submitted by the applicant. OCG indicated in the report that there are no viable existing towers, public structures, or other appropriate support structures in the area that would allow T-Mobile to co-locate and meet the needs of its network in this area. OCG also reviews and analyzes the coverage maps provided by the applicant and is in agreement with their findings. Per LDC 61129G, a letter of intent committing the antenna tower to share use for co-location has been submitted by Skyway Towers, LLC. T-Mobile submitted a letter of intent to co-locate on the proposed towers December 26, 2023, and notice to other potential users was sent on January 24th, 2024. No objections have been received by staff from the review agencies. No transportation impacts are anticipated and very few are anticipated proposed power and very few trips per peak hour are expected. Based on staff findings, staff finds requests approvable subject to the conditions contained within the staff report. I'd like to add Chris Monzingo, the county's third-party consultant, is also going to be available to answer any technical questions. And that completes mine.
All right, thank you. I had a question for the applicant, which was basically deferred to staff that had to do with that, that illustration of whether the tower would be visible to someone on one of the residential use properties. And could you address that, or would that be the the other person you mentioned who is here to,
Well, that would
available.
be, because there's several tree lines in the area, so if you take the height of the tree lines, that's where those measurements come from. So there's several, and we have to enter into the record the calculations that show the distances.
and did staff find that the visibility wouldn't impact those residential use properties?
It would be greatly reduced, the visual.
I'm sorry, I need to be able to hear this testimony, so please keep the room
It would be
quiet.
considerably reduced based on the angle and the number of tree lines that are in the area.
All right, thank you. And also, I believe there's camouflage on this tower?
That's correct. The application, the plans show the monopine design, which would be enforced at site plan review.
Okay, and that was also relevant in the finding of compatibility, wasn't it?
It is.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything further?
No, ma'am.
All right. Appreciate that. All right, Planning Commission.
Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located in two land use categories, the residential 2 and the research corporate park designations. The site is located in the urban service area and within the limits of the Northwest Hillsborough Community Plan. The special use is compatible with the character of the surrounding area in accordance with Policy 1.4 of the future land use element. The monopine wireless communication tower will be in an area that's heavily wooded, and the camouflage design will be reflective of the existing tree canopy in the immediate area. The wooded area that surrounds the proposed tower serves as a natural buffer from the adjacent properties. The area surrounding the tower will be fenced, and so the compound will also be screened from all sides. The design is sensitive to the surrounding uses and preserves the mature trees. Therefore, the request meets the intent of the policies under Objective 16. The proposed special use also meets the intent of future land use element Objective 46 and policies 46.1 and 46.2 that require telecommunication towers and facilities to be in areas with compatible land uses and adhere to all local, state, and federal laws. The request does not include any variations to the required setbacks or height with regards to telecommunication towers and facilities. The proposed special use meets the intent of Section D of the Northwest Area Community Plan that specifically seeks to ensure adequate infrastructure and balancing urban service systems through an equitable assignment of fiscal responsibility between private and public sectors. The applicant is proposing a wireless communication tower that would serve the greater area and is supported by private sector companies who intend to utilize the communication tower to expand their services in Hillsborough County. Based on these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed special use consistent with the comprehensive plan, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Dorman, did you want to speak to the issue related to what the land use hearing officer can consider or not consider in a communications tower?
If you're talking about the RF?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
I think
you.
that there's a federal preemption in the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that states that no state or local government may regulate the placement of the towers on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions due to the extent that such facilities comply with the FCC guidelines. So as long as the FCC guidelines are followed, then those considerations are not to be considered by the local government in its regulation of the cell tower.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we'll go to the public. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak, first of all, in support of this application? All right, not hearing anyone. I see a room full of folks, so are there folks who wish to speak in opposition to this application? And please
Yes.
let me know how many speakers we have so we can talk about allotting time.
Yes.
All right,
For the
I see two.
Yep.
Just a moment, Mr. Pressman, thank you. All right, raise your hand if you plan to speak.
Madam
All
Mayor,
right, so I've got
one person online as well.
1, 2, 3, 4 here. How many persons do I have online? I see one. So we have 4 persons here and 1 person online. Is that correct? Maybe 2. All right. So doing the math, we've got 15 minutes to allot among, if it was 5 people, I'd say 3 minutes. So it looks like we have 6. I'm not going to do that math. 3 minutes each, okay? So I think we've got up to 6 people, 3 minutes apiece. And keep in mind that I cannot consider those items that are irrelevant or immaterial or unduly repetitious, so those related to impact on health or environment, that sort of thing. All right? Yes.
Todd Pressman, 200 Second Avenue South, number 451 St. Petersburg, representing numerous residents and citizens nearby. In terms of matters to be considered, the history of the subject parcel, the site first came in attention to the county under the code enforcement in terms of improper use. That went to a zoning interpretation, and this is all on the record for you. It's already submitted, where the zoning administrator, Mr. Moretta, at that time found that use of events are conducted for Philippine culture, but rent or use of facilities that are not related to Philippine culture is prohibited, and continued that business and commercial uses were categorically prohibited, which was a staff finding, which is in the record, and indicated here as well. In 23, application 05A3 came through from the applicant that sought to, as we understand it, perhaps the applicant wants to clarify, seeking to change that element, which was then withdrawn. And additionally, the applicant received grants from the state, which also specifically prohibit, as we understand, specifically prohibit or restrict their use, again, to cultural facility uses. That's all in the record. And as we have from the record, they memorialize this as a lease, as we understand, as a commercial element, which would not be permissible as we understand it in that history. Tower is very close within proximity. The neighbors did a beautiful balloon test, which you can see at only 150 feet, shows the tower would be extremely visible. They did a second drone flight, as you can see, on the tree line, and a number of viewing locations as well that would show, you can see a white line, which indicates that drone flight is very difficult to see, but you'll see it on the drive. So at 195 feet proposed versus 50 feet, which is the typical tree height that we've measured, and I think is mentioned in the staff report, your metric is that it's 400% over the tree line, as we understand it, which would be a visual intrusion, negative impact on wide open natural spaces, clearly out of scale and excessive mass. Now, the staff diagrams are 2D. They assume a full tree line, consistent height of trees, don't consider sparse forestation or differing vantage points, which we've shown you in the record. So we disagree with staff approach on that. Isotrope is on virtual presentation that they will review the RF findings. Under the comp plan, it calls for requiring buffer areas and screening, which clearly you cannot see or clearly will not provide screening or buffering. And between policy 16.2 as well, creation of like uses and the elements between them. And in regard to camouflage, you can see only about 20% of the actual pole is actually camouflaged. You have letters from County Commissioner Ken Hagan and State Representative Koster on the record as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pressman. Be sure and sign in with the clerk. Thank you.
Madam Hearing Examiner Max Forgy, member in good standing of the American Institute of Certified Planners for 31 years, on behalf of the same clients that Mr. Pressman is representing. I have provided you with my resume and with a written expert report. And to summarize that, there are two compelling reasons for denying this application. The first is that this is not ripe because the use proposed is inconsistent with the applicant's state grant, which has been in place since 2000, and it should not even be heard. The second reason, the most compelling reason, is that this use will be incompatible with the neighboring uses. And for that, I refer you to Chapter 163.3164, paren 9 of Florida statutes, which defines compatibility. Compatibility means a condition in which land uses or conditions can coexist in relative proximity to each other in a stable fashion over time, such that no use or condition is unduly negatively impacted directly or indirectly by another use or condition. The proposed 195-foot WCSS would exist in more than relative proximity to the Water Chase neighborhood and its residents. It would be in the immediate proximity. It would not coexist with the neighbors. It would, for example, introduce no benefit or service that the neighbors do not currently enjoy. It would impose a 195-foot high object that would loom over the neighborhood. There is no good reason to imagine that Water Chase neighbors 20 years from now over time would embrace and enjoy its presence so close to their homes. Finally, the undoubted negative impact of height, mass, and scale flows in one direction only. Water Chase will have no impact on the tower. The tower's impacts will affect the neighbors without question. I'm going to wrap up, but I wish to refer you in particular to the very detailed report prepared by Councilor Appel as to the ripeness of this case. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Be sure and sign in with the clerk's office.
Good morning. Chris Ivanich, 12017 Meridian Point Drive, Tampa, Florida, 33626. I see we have a lot of people here. Before I get started, everyone who's in opposition, can you please stand up? Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Thank you for taking the time this morning. I'd like to submit to the records two letters, a letter from Commissioner Hagan and also State Representative Tracy Koster requesting denial of this application. So I have those copies. I'd also like to submit to the record documents in opposition of the proposed tower, which was prepared by an attorney and also some engineering firms. Thank you. I'd like to yield any of my remaining time to others for opposition. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. I'm Michael Easton. I live at 12118 San Shaliford Court in Tampa, Florida, 33626. I represent a group of homeowners on the street that is as close as 400 feet from this proposed tower. I've submitted into the record a document, a memorandum opposing the tower, as well as exhibits from our residents in mass of well over 300 pages for your review. Highlights of this are that granting the Skyway Towers application would not only violate the applicable provisions of the Hillsborough County Land Development Code, but also would violate the explicit state legislative intent for which the county enacted such provisions. The installation of such massive tower would inflict wholly unnecessary, albeit substantial, adverse impacts upon more than 100 nearby homes that surround the facility. And Skyway Towers has failed to provide any probative evidence whatsoever that his proposed 19-story tower is actually necessary for any wireless carrier to provide personal wireless services within the county, or that the residents of the county would derive any benefit whatsoever therefrom. Skyway Towers has wholly failed to establish whatever might need exists for the new tower. Could not be remedied by the installation of a tower at a less intrusive alternative site. They haven't found another site, or with a shorter cell tower. Accordingly, it is respectfully submitted that the Skyway Towers application should be denied, and that it denied in a manner that complies with the procedural requirements for such a denial mandated under the Telecommunications Act of 1996.
All right. Is this the document you said you submitted to
Yes,
the
ma'am.
record? Okay, thank you. I received it, and I will review it.
Thank you.
All right, next speaker, please. Was there anyone else here?
I think that would be me, David.
All right, we have someone online. We need to be able to see you. Is your camera working?
Yes, it's on.
Okay, I see you.
I see my head in the bottom of the image.
Gotcha,
there.
okay.
Is it possible to share some slides?
Are you sharing them from your screen?
I would do that, yes, if I may.
Did you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is David Maxon, 140 Elmridge Road, Pawcatuck, Connecticut, 06379, working as a partner in, Isotrope LLC, and working for the residents.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
All right, so I can try sharing here. Thank you. I will try to be quick. Start my timer just in case. So I'm a municipal wireless consultant as well as a designer and builder of private wireless and radio communications networks. I have been working in the municipal space since 1988. And I am not an attorney, but I have a tremendous amount of experience with all of these issues with local zoning and with the Federal Telecommunications Act. First thing I want to do real quick is just to show a normal lens view. This is not a zoom view. This is close to a normal 50-millimeter lens view from the back of one of the residents' yards with that drone photography that was described earlier. This is the kind of experience that some of the folks in the neighborhoods will be experiencing. If you're standing near the trees in the background of this photograph, you probably won't see the tower. And that's an important distinction. I have 8 points. I'd like to just bullet those 8 points so that we get them on the record for purposes of appeal, and then we can go into more detail as time permits. First of all, the yard requirements are not being complied with. I think the cell tower was evaluated from the center of the tower rather from the outer surface of the tower, and you wouldn't evaluate the yard compliance of a detached garage from the center of a garage. The tower is also larger in diameter, probably, than what is shown on the diagram. I normally see about a 6-foot diameter on a tower that is 190 feet tall. The coverage analysis and the capacity analysis is primitive at best. And these have probably more to do with the Telecommunications Act than specifically with your code. And as you probably know, if you are inclined to deny this application, there are certain federal requirements that council will advise you on that include substantial evidence in the written record. You need to be sure you have a good record. The coverage analysis just simply looks at a poor performing high frequency signal, and they say, well, we need this for capacity. But the thing is, what they don't say is 5G coverage is presently available, and I've done some analysis on my computer analysis tools, and that is presently available. I say I have about 30 seconds left. So capacity analysis is insufficient. You can improve capacity on small cells without having to use a new tower. Tower height is unnecessary. There's no evidence that lesser height won't work. The tower does not comply with the camouflage requirement because it is the tower as well as the antennas that must be camouflaged. Tower safety has not been addressed. There are opportunities for things to fail and fail badly, and the visual impacts, as I noted, are not properly evaluated. I have come to my 3 minutes, but if there is more time available, I'd be happy to use it.
Mr. Maxon, just one moment, please. I allotted 3 minutes for each speaker. There was an earlier speaker who yielded 2 minutes and 10 seconds, so I would ask the clerk please to give you another 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Do you think you can conclude in that time?
I can keep going, but I can move as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So what I did is I took the most recent site plan, which does not have yards indicated on it, and I did my best estimate as to where the yards fall. And you can see here that the generator, which was originally proposed to be in the side yard above the tower on this drawing, staff very wisely asked the applicant to relocate that so that it would be outside of the yard. And of course, a buffer variance is not a yard variance. The T-Mobile pad is over here, and it looks like two diminutive little containers. But in fact, those are the doors, and the cabinets are these white boxes here, and they're 6 to 7 feet tall typically. So we have T-Mobile's equipment, which by the definition of a yard and a structure is not allowed in a front yard. And the wireless code specifically refers to the area and the facility, not just to the tower. But on top of that, the yard is an overarching requirement. Now, in addition to that, this is a Trojan horse because other wireless companies will come in and not only put in pads, but generators and potentially shelters. So to me, I just don't see why this is being considered. I think perhaps staff may have overlooked it because it just looked like a concrete pad and would not have violated the yard requirements. So just looking at their elevation drawing, now in addition to the cabinets, there are these things called waveguide or cable bridges that are permanent fixtures that protect the cables from falling objects off the tower. Those are also in the yard. So this is my most critical failure of the application. I think it just simply is in violation of the standards. I think what I will do is not go into this, but if there's an opportunity, the residents have two of my reports. They have perhaps also some photographs of their own that they've done of the drone, and I think those, if it's possible to submit that information, I think it would be very helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, next speaker, I believe we have one more speaker.
I believe there was a Mike Halazon that unmuted and put up their hand earlier. Mike, if can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. Mike Haleas, 11633 Meridian Point Drive. Obviously, I don't need to reiterate all the wonderful information some of my fellow residents have had, but on behalf of some of my neighbors and myself, I know one of the presentations from the person submitting the application had said that the view would be we would not be able to view it, but I strongly disagree. If you're within the trees, you may not be able to view the tower, but from within Water Chase community, we would be able to see the tower anywhere from within the community. And I think the previous two speakers proved to that point. Aside from the fact, obviously it will affect, the values of our homes that we've spent a lot of time and money working to be able to earn these homes. But that view would absolutely obstruct and completely change the whole landscape of, this community in general. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir. Was there another person online to speak on this case?
I believe that's everyone online.
All right, thank you. We do have, I know there was one person who ended before the 3 minutes were up. So Mr. Pressman, you're back up. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds exactly.
Just a quick mention, also in the record is a report from Amanda Sifter, who is a longtime broker a real estate broker in that area, one of the most successful, who's also presented a report on her opinion of how this tower would affect property values. And I'd like the record to show that in the audience are 75 persons. I see a lot of head shaking. So 75 persons, residents, citizens who would be affected and are here participating. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Pressman. All right. County Development Services.
Just a couple items to clarify for the record. For wireless communication facilities in our allowable uses, section 20202, they're classified as neighborhood and general public service and emergency service uses rather than commercial or business categories. And any accessory structures would be subject to 61104, which does have some different setback requirements. And any generators would be subject to 60103I3. And so any proposed generators would, and that does allow for a projection 3 feet into the required side yard from that AR zoning district.
All right, thank you. Do you, in this case, I don't believe there was a variance request for that setback. Is that, so that's not to be considered, or is that potentially to be considered?
The generator was moved to the south side in that most recent revised plan, specifically to ensure that it will meet the requirements of 60103I3.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ball, did you have anything further?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, thank you. Applicant.
Again, Jamie Mayer of the law firm Hillward Henderson for the record, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700. I know I typically have 5 minutes. I would request an additional 3 given the time afforded to the opposition and the time I held in my initial presentation.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
3 minutes. Do you recall how much you had left over? I think it was about 2 minutes from your prior.
That sounds correct. I think it was 3, but we'll take 2. I'll take the additional 5. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. So a few I appreciate staff. I was going to mention the question about the generators, the setbacks of the items that could go within those lease areas, and we are aware of the requirement of the setbacks that apply there, and we did make sure that that generator was put in the right spot relative to those setbacks. I just want to point out a few things with respect to the camouflage. I mean, nobody is going to claim that this tower is going to be invisible. That's not. I certainly didn't say that, and I never would. I don't think anybody would say that. I think that the purpose of the camouflage, and again, this is not, of course, the place to decide what the code should be as far as what the land development regulation should be with respect to how a tower goes up, with respect to what's required of it in order to go in a certain location. This is, of course, the area to apply those regulations and make sure that they are satisfied. Again, the code, quote, compatibility is presumed based on a camouflage tower in the AR zoning district. It's a tree camouflage, and the antenna will be painted green as well. That's standard, so they will be part of that green part at the top. And you saw the many different towers in a fairly, in a radius that's within the same community plan area and the areas around it. Towers are not invisible. There are 3 easements for transmission lines in this area. One runs north-south, several run east-west, and if you're on Racetrack Road, which is just to the south of the site, you can see these very large transmission lines dotting the horizon, as well as the other towers. I didn't show you some of the towers that are in more commercial areas, but those are those 600-foot red and white towers. You can see them. I think that we would all know that when we drive up the Veterans Expressway, the horizon through Odessa, through West Chase, through Lutz, is dotted with towers. So again, we're not claiming that it's going to be invisible, but we have located it in an area that meets the separation requirements. It's not the proximity to the residential uses that triggers anything because it is within the required separation from those residential uses. I think I'd like to ask our RF engineer to just address some of the things that were said by the isotope gentleman. Some of his testimony, I think, was getting into the planning area, which of course is not competent substantial evidence when it's coming from someone who's not a planner, but as it relates to, I think, the coverage would be relevant to address, and I'll come back after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Byron Elkins, thank you. The statement was made that T-Mobile already has 5G coverage in this area, and I would just like to add to that that is correct, but it comes with a low-capacity nature. We have different frequencies that we offer 5G on, and the problem that we're trying to solve is related to our mid-band, which is called ultra capacity in the marketing world. So in order to offer reliable ultra capacity 5G coverage, this tower is required at that height for that purpose. It was also stated that 90 feet would be sufficient for a tower to offer that type of service or 5G coverage. And in our opinion, that's way too short, and we don't have line of sight to the cell edge that we designed to. So for perhaps some of the houses that are very close to this tower, that may be suitable, but to the cell edge of the designed coverage area, we respectfully disagree. Another solution that was offered was small cells in the area. I have been working for the past 5 years on T-Mobile's 5-cell design for Tampa and Orlando, and our small cell solutions don't offer the same technology that these macro towers offer. There's a technology called massive MIMO, which we do not offer on small cells. It's only available at 150 feet and higher type towers. So that's what we were offering this community and our customers in this community. And I think that was all the ones I caught a note on, but I'm available to answer any other technical questions as to what we're trying to do with this community.
Well, I would just like to hear for you to state on the record if your testimony is such that, in your professional opinion, that the 190 feet is required in this case to meet the service that your client or that the applicant is seeking to meet.
Yes. For the record, our design is at a RAD center, a radiation center of 185 feet, and that met all of the design criteria that we had for this project.
Okay, and the tower has to be 190 feet to meet that RAD of 185, is that?
That's correct. There's other compliance like the lightning rod and things that go on the top of these towers. It's standard construction type requirement.
Exactly. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And I will note that the state statute that applies doesn't require this kind of information to be provided about business decisions about T-Mobile's service, their customer demand, or quality from a particular area to a particular site, but we felt it was relevant to at least address some of those comments that were made. I heard property values raised, and in your packet and in the record, there is a 68-page study by Lee Pallardy, Inc., David Talby of Lee Pallardy, Inc., and his curriculum vitae is also in the record and an affidavit. He has decades of experience in the Gulf Coast of Florida. He has interviewed hundreds of realtors and property appraisers themselves. He has more, probably, I would say it's fair to say, more information about the impacts of cell towers in the entire Gulf Coast of Florida on property values. I will read a few quotes from that study, and I would urge, Madam Hearing Officer, for you to review it in your review of the documents. The evidence is clear that there is no market information supporting measurable impacts on residential or commercial property values because of proximity to a tower. Based on objective studies, including interviews with nearly 200 realtors, the market evidence is clear. No adverse impacts resulting from a tower can be supported by market sales. Not one county property appraiser, including Hillsborough County, interviewed by Mr. Talby, has made an adjustment, downward or otherwise, to a property assessment because of proximity to a cell tower. So again, I want to reiterate, this site, as far as the code is concerned, is not a controversial site. It meets the land development code requirements. The only relief we're asking for is a variance to the 20-foot buffering and screening that comes up. I know you're familiar with in any case, there's that standard buffering and screening. We don't find that that really weighs on any of the concerns articulated by anyone here. And we respectfully request you approve this application and the associated variance. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll close the hearing on special use CFW 24-0280. All right, I appreciate everyone clearing the room quietly. Thank you for that. And I think we're probably ready to go forward with the next case.
So the last item is item I3, special use 240390. The applicant is Peng Cheng LLC. The request is a special use 2 COP RX alcoholic beverage permit with separation waivers. Staff findings will be provided by Michelle Montalbano after presentation by the applicant.
All right, thank you. Applicant.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jason Liu. Address 11909 Sheldon Road, Tampa, Florida, 33626.
Thank you.
Today, try to get a distance waiver waived. It's required to have, we're supposed to have 150 feet separation between the residential zone to our restaurant. But unfortunately, after a survey came back, we're shy of 70 feet from the distance from the commercial and the residential line. But is covered by a massive conservation setback. So I think we should be okay.
Okay, so you're requesting a variance from the distance, or I'm sorry, you're requesting a waiver of the distance between the alcoholic beverage use and residential properties.
Correct.
Okay, and again, you're looking for a 70-foot waiver, is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and this is going to be a restaurant?
Yes, it's a small restaurant, about 16 tables, which is like our patrons to have the option to order beer and wine to pair with their Japanese noodle soup.
Is it an existing restaurant?
It is an existing shopping plaza, but before we took over, it was like an office space.
Okay, so you're opening a new restaurant?
Correct.
All right, and you're looking for, or your alcoholic beverage sales will be beer and wine?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
It'll be...
No hard liquor, just beer and wine. All right. Anything else?
No.
All right. Thank you. Be sure and sign in with the clerk.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Michelle Montalbano, Development Services. As the applicant stated, the request is for a 2-COP RX alcoholic beverage special use application with waivers to residentially zoned property for a restaurant, Manono Ramen. The proposed wet zoning area is a total of 2,476 square feet and an existing strip center zone PD 161079. The proposed wet zoning is within 150 feet from residentially zoned property to the south, where the parcel abuts a multifamily residential development zoned RMC 20. The residential zone is approximately 80 feet from the proposed wet zoning. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a waiver of 70 feet. The neighboring multifamily dwellings are buffered from the subject strip center by a large wetland conservation area. The closest apartment building within the adjacent multifamily residential parcel is over a straight line distance of 500 feet from the proposed wet zoning area, and the driving distance is approximately 1/3 of a mile to the apartment buildings. Also, the proposed wet zoning is within PD 161079, which allows for mixed uses, including existing residential dwellings around 250 feet from the proposed wet zoning. For these reasons, staff finds the proposed wet zoning approvable, as it does not pose significant impacts on surrounding land uses, and the necessity for the specified distance requirements is negated. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I'm looking at the staff report, just a little map on the front. So the residentially zoned property that's within 150 feet, what direction is that?
It's to the south.
Okay, so it's that large wetland area?
Correct.
Okay. No concern with properties to the west across Sheldon Road?
No, that was just over 150 feet.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Is there, we don't go to Planning Commission on this one, do we? No. Okay. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right, don't hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, don't hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And applicant, did you have anything further? No? Okay, thank you. That closes the hearing on special use AB 24-0390. And that concludes our land use hearing officer meeting for today.